Just sweep the floor, old man. Leave the real work to the Marines. The words, sharp and dismissive, sliced through the quiet hum of the armory. They were aimed at Elias Thorne, a man whose stooped shoulders and gray, thinning hair told a story of time, but not the one these young warriors bothered to read. He paused, his gnarled hand resting on the wooden handle of his push broom, and looked at the source of the voice. Sergeant Kent, a sniper barely in his mid-20s, stood with his team, arrogance radiating from him like heat from asphalt. They were wrestling with a brand-new M110A1 rifle, its sleek, modern frame a stark contrast to the old man in faded blue coveralls. Elias's eyes, the color of a washed-out sky, held a depth of patience that seemed infinite. He said nothing, simply gave a slow nod and continued his work, the soft swish-swish of his broom the only reply. The laughter that followed was quiet but sharp, a sound that chipped away at the dignity of a man they saw as nothing more than a ghost haunting their halls of glory. If you believe true heroes walk among us, often unseen and unheard, type honor in the comments below. Elias Thorne was a creature of routine and silence. At 0500, long before the first cadence calls echoed across the parade grounds of Camp Lejeune, he was already at work. As a civilian contractor, his official title was custodial engineer, a fancy term for a janitor. He cleaned the barracks, the administrative buildings, and his least favorite place, the advanced training facilities. It was here, in the armories and ready rooms of the Marine Corps' most elite units, that the ghosts of his past whispered the loudest. Every scent of CLP gun oil, every sharp click of a bolt carrier group seating home, was a memory. His hands, though now wrinkled and spotted with age, moved with an economy and purpose that belied his humble station. He never wasted emotion, whether he was mopping a floor or wiping down a window. It was the ingrained discipline of a lifetime spent in service, a life these young men, in all their youthful pride, could never imagine for him. They saw a stooped old man, a relic to be ignored or, at best, pitied. They didn't see the steel in his spine that had never truly bent, or the encyclopedic knowledge stored behind his placid gaze. The issue with the new rifle had become a festering wound for Sergeant Kent's sniper platoon. The M110A1 squad-designated marksman rifle was supposed to be a state-of-the-art piece of equipment, a precision instrument of lethal force. But this particular rifle, assigned to Kent's spotter, was a lemon. It consistently failed to cycle, jamming after every second or third round. They'd spent weeks on it. Armorers had stripped it down, replaced parts, polished the feed ramps, and checked the gas system until they were blue in the face. Yet, the problem persisted, a stubborn gremlin in the machine that defied all their modern training and technical manuals. Their frustration mounted with each passing day, and it often spilled over onto the quiet janitor who was always, inexplicably, there. Elias never lingered, but his work often brought him through their spaces as they cursed and tinkered. He'd hear snippets of their conversation. "It's the bolt carrier tilt," one would say. "No, it has to be the ammo," Kent would argue, his voice tight with anger. "We've tried 3 different lots of M80A1, Sergeant. It's not the ammo." Elias would continue his sweeping, his expression unchanging, but his mind was working. He saw the way they handled the weapon, the minute details they were overlooking in their high-tech diagnostic fury. The annual All-Marine Corps sniper competition was approaching, and the pressure was immense. Kent's team was favored to win, but their chances were evaporating with every jam. Their confidence was eroding, replaced by a brittle, aggressive anxiety. One afternoon, their frustration boiled over. They had the rifle completely disassembled on a workbench, its parts laid out like a surgeon's instruments. Kent slammed his fist on the table, scattering a few small pins. "This is useless, a multi-thousand-dollar paperweight," he seethed. Elias was nearby, quietly cleaning the inside of a weapons locker. He had watched them for 20 minutes, his practiced eye catching the subtle error in their reassembly process, the one thing the manuals didn't emphasize because it was considered too basic to mention. He decided to risk it. In a voice barely above a whisper, he spoke without turning around. "Check the alignment of your gas block," he said, his voice raspy from disuse. The port might be misaligned by a hair. As a common mistake on a new barrel, the room went dead silent. Kent slowly turned, his face a mask of incredulous fury. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. Elias turned to face them, his gaze calm. "The gas block," he repeated softly. "If it's not perfectly centered over the gas port on the barrel, you'll get inconsistent pressure. It'll cause short-stroking." Kent let out a short, barking laugh devoid of humor. "The gas block? We've micrometered the entire system. We've had the master armorer look at it. You think we missed the gas block?" He took a step toward Elias, puffing out his chest. "Listen, Pops. I appreciate you keeping the floors clean, but you're out of your lane. Way out. Now why don't you stick to your broom and let the experts handle the firearms?" His teammates snickered, emboldened by their leader's aggression. Elias simply held his gaze for a moment longer, a flicker of something ancient and weary in his eyes. He gave another one of his slow, deliberate nods and turned back to his locker, the matter closed. But the seed of his words had been planted, an irritant under the skin of Kent's pride. The sergeant, fuming, reassembled the rifle with exaggerated care, making a show of ignoring the old man's advice. The next day, on the qualification range, his team's rifle jammed on the second shot. The day after, during a critical time drill, it jammed again, costing them dearly. The competition was less than a week away, and their state-of-the-art rifle was a liability that could humiliate them all. The final shakedown before the competition was a high-stress event. Dignitaries from Marine Corps Systems Command were present, along with several high-ranking officers. The range was hot, the air thick with tension and the smell of gunpowder. Kent's team was up. They lay prone, the problematic rifle steady on its bipod. The first shot was a clean bullseye. The second, a dull click. A failure to eject. A classic stovepipe jam. Kent cursed under his breath as his spotter frantically tried to clear the malfunction. The observing officers exchanged displeased glances. This was a catastrophic failure in front of the brass. As the young Marine struggled, Elias Thorne pushed a large-wheeled trash bin along the firing line, his movements as unobtrusive as always. He happened to stop just behind the group of observing officers to empty a smaller can. One of the officers, a formidable gunnery sergeant with a face like a roadmap of every conflict since the 90s, glanced over. His eyes, sharp and discerning, swept past the struggling snipers and landed on the janitor. He froze. His posture straightened, and a look of pure, unadulterated shock washed over his weathered features. The other officers noticed his reaction. "Something wrong, Gunny Miller?" a major asked. Gunny Miller didn't answer. He took a slow step forward, his eyes locked on Elias. He squinted, as if trying to reconcile a ghost with reality. "Master Guns. Thorne?" he said, his voice a low, reverent rumble. The name hung in the air, electric and heavy. Elias stopped his work and slowly turned. He looked at the gunnery sergeant, and for the first time in a long time, a flicker of recognition, of a shared past, warmed his pale eyes. He offered a small, sad smile. "Just Elias now, Gunny." It's been a long time. Gunny Miller looked as if he'd seen a monument come to life. He snapped to the most rigid position of attention Elias had ever seen. "Sir," he barked, his voice cracking with emotion. I thought you were living in Montana." The surrounding officers, including the major, were now staring, completely bewildered. They saw their most respected and feared instructor standing at perfect attention for the janitor. Sergeant Kent and his team, having finally cleared their weapon, had overheard the exchange and were gaping in disbelief. "Gunny, what's going on?" the major asked, stepping forward. Gunny Miller turned to the major, but his eyes kept darting back to Elias, as if afraid he might disappear. "Major, you're looking at Master Gunnery Sergeant Elias Thorne. Retired," he said, his voice filled with awe. "This man didn't just serve. He practically wrote the book on Marine Corps precision weaponry. He was the lead armorer and technical advisor at Weapons Training Battalion for 20 years. He helped design the M40A3, He personally field-tested the prototypes for the M110 system when it was first being considered. There isn't a man alive who knows more about what makes these rifles tick. He turned back to Elias. Master Guns, what are you doing with a broom? Elias shrugged, a simple gesture that carried the weight of 1,000 untold stories. A man's got to keep busy, Gunny. Pension doesn't pay for everything. The air on the range was thick with a new kind of tension. The dawning horror of profound disrespect. Sergeant Kent's face had gone from ruddy with anger to chalk-white with shame. He looked at the old man he'd mocked, the man he'd told to stick to his broom, and saw not a janitor, but a living legend. He felt the blood drain from his face. Gunny Miller's gaze fell upon the malfunctioning rifle in the young sniper's hands. A dark understanding dawned on his face. He looked at Kent, his eyes narrowing to slits. "Sergeant," he growled, "has your team been having trouble with this weapon?" Kent could barely speak. He managed to choke. "Yes." Gunny Miller's eyes flickered to Elias, then back to Kent. "And did you, by any chance, seek counsel from anyone outside your chain of command?" The unspoken accusation was a physical blow. Kent couldn't meet his eyes. He just stared at the ground, the full weight of his arrogance crashing down on him. Elias stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. He walked past the stunned officers and knelt beside the prone sniper. "May I?" he asked, his voice as gentle as ever. The young Marine practically shoved the rifle into his hands. Elias's fingers, which had seemed so clumsy on a broom handle, moved with a surgeon's grace and an artist's familiarity. He didn't need tools. His hands knew the weapon's soul. In less than 10 seconds, he had popped 2 takedown pins, separated the receivers, and pointed with a single steady finger. "There," he said. He tapped the small gas block barely visible beneath the handguard. "When you installed the new barrel, you torqued the retaining screws out of sequence. You're off-center by less than a millimeter. Enough to bleed gas, not enough to be obvious." He then, with a simple push and a twist using a cartridge tip as a lever, made a minute adjustment. He reassembled the weapon with 3 swift, fluid motions. The entire operation took less than half a minute. He handed the rifle back to the stunned Marine. "Try it now." The young Marine, his hands trembling, settled behind the rifle. He chambered a round and fired. A clean shot. He worked the bolt. It cycled perfectly. He fired again, and again. A full magazine, fired in a smooth, flawless rhythm. The rifle performed like the precision instrument it was designed to be. Silence. The only sound was the tinkling of brass casings hitting the concrete. Sergeant Kent stood frozen, his face a portrait of mortification. He took a hesitant step forward, then another. He stopped in front of Elias and drew himself to a stiff, formal attention. "Master Gunnery Sergeant Thorne," he began, his voice thick with shame. There is no excuse for my conduct, for my team's conduct. I was arrogant, and I was disrespectful. I am sorry." Sir Elias looked at the young sergeant, his eyes holding not anger, but a deep, resonant melancholy. "The most important tool a sniper has isn't his rifle, Sergeant," he said quietly. "It's his eyes. You have to see everything, not just the target. You have to see what's right in front of you." He looked at the young men of the team. "Respect is earned, but dignity is inherent. Remember that." He then turned and picked up his push broom, as if to resume his work. But Gunny Miller stepped in his path. "No, Master Guns," he said firmly. No more. The base commander, who had been briefed by the major in hushed, urgent tones, strode over. He extended a hand to Elias. "Master Gunnery Sergeant Thorne, I am Colonel Davies. It is an honor, sir. An absolute honor. We have been unforgivably blind." He cleared his throat, his own face flushed with embarrassment for the institution. "We would be honored if you would accept a position as a civilian consultant and master instructor for our sniper school. Your knowledge is irreplaceable. We need you." Elias looked from the colonel's outstretched hand to his old broom, then back. A slow smile touched his lips. It wasn't about the job or the title. It was about the circle closing. It was about being seen again. The next week, Sergeant Kent's team competed, their rifle performing flawlessly. They didn't win, but they placed third, a respectable finish they owed entirely to the janitor they had scorned. Their real victory came a month later on the range. Their new instructor, a quiet old man in a simple polo shirt and tactical pants, knelt beside them. His name was Elias Thorne. He didn't shout or demean. He spoke in low, precise tones, his gnarled hands guiding their own, teaching them not just how to shoot, but how to see. A uniform doesn't define the warrior. The spirit within does. And sometimes, the greatest legends are the ones who have long since hung theirs up, content to sweep the floors of the world they helped build, waiting only for someone to look past the broom and see the hero holding it. If you believe every veteran deserves our respect, no matter their station in life, subscribe to our channel for more stories that honor the silent heroes.